And so the final piece, I'll just say this in closing before we go to Q&A, and this is about our children's assertion of their non-belief when they come to that. The one thing I've always encouraged my children to do is to make this decision for themselves. I remember my youngest, a few years ago, he said, "Mom, are we all atheists?" And I said, "Well, no, not really. You know, I said, we're allowing you to make the decision for yourself." And he said, "Mom, I really want to be an atheist because it sounds so important." And I said, "Well, it is. You know, it is important, but it's important to me and your father. It's not, I don't even want you to think about that right now." And my sons went through this period where they watched VeggieTales all the time, and it would make me cringe. But, you know, they eventually grew out of that. But I will say that my daughter, who is my 21-year-old, who we moved down to Georgia with when she was 3 weeks old, and her junior year of high school, she told me about a class assignment that she had, which was to write a memoir. And she chose to write about why she acknowledged herself as atheist. And she didn't tell me that until after the assignment was submitted. And she was concerned about how the teacher was going to respond to her. And so I told her, "Well, if you have any trouble, just let me know. We'll be right up at that school." She ended up getting a 95 on her assignment. And the teacher thought it was very well written, it was funny, and when I read it I pretty much cried because she referenced the work that I was doing at Black Nonbelievers, and which was part of it, and I didn't know that. But I was so moved that I re-blogged it on our site, and it was eventually republished as an article for American Atheist Magazine in 2015. So she worked with the editors there. And so I say that because as strong of a woman as I am, first of all, my kids tease me, like, "Mom, you're old." You know, my 13 and 10-year-old, when I say certain things, they're like, "Yeah, Mom, don't do that. It's not cool." So, you know, but they have that liberty. They have that freedom to kind of joke within limits to say certain things. But I do know that what we're doing does have an impact on them. And it's not simply for them, because we don't just stop living our lives, or we don't stop trying to develop ourselves simply because we have children. And that's the expectation, especially for women, is that when you have kids, your life is supposed to stop, and it doesn't. So, but when we continue on in what we do, they see it. So hopefully that is a piece for them to navigate and to carry on, you know, as they grow. So I just remember that, because I mean, my daughter is not as, she's actually going at the end of this month to teach English as a second language in China. She graduated with her bachelor's degree in 3 years, magna cum laude, from Johnson & Wales University. And she did that. We didn't do it, she did it. And we did it without being strict on her, that she had to hit the books every single moment. It was that she was allowed to live her life as a teenager and to develop. And so, as outspoken as she became, and because she knew she had that support, my boys know that too. And so, but there a lot of people, like I said, I was a cool mom too. You know, some of her kids, my daughter's friends love coming to our house, and they knew we were atheists. So, I think that gives us some validation, a lot of validation to how we're raising our kids. So it does make a huge difference. And for them to be as outspoken, we try to navigate that. We don't try to tell them just don't say this, but I find that many of our secular children are more assertive and they have more leadership qualities. Why? Because we're not trying to stifle them. So navigating that has been a huge piece.
Yeah. To piggyback on what she said, and you know, about being the cool mom and all that, my mom wasn't cool. So you kind of want to do the opposite of what your mom did. So I do want to be the cool mom. And as far as it goes with the children, the 15-year-old in his belief system, he was with it. When I said I didn't believe no more, he's like, okay, good. Cause he didn't, you know, he's just stereotypical dude about it. He's just like, yeah, right? And then the two middle boys, the 14 and the 13-year-old, you know, sometimes I can hear them off in the distance having the conversation about it. They're both non-believers, and you know, they have those conversations like, you know, and then so-and-so said this about God, and if God did this, then that, and that doesn't make sense. So, like, that's so cool that they can have these conversations, like, wow, look at them, like, look, y'all have been thinking about it and stuff. Now, my daughter, she's party girl, right? She's 10, everything's party. With all of the children, I've never told them what they should or should not believe. It's the same thing with my diet, with my dietary restrictions or whatever I do. I'm a vegetarian. I don't make my children be vegetarian. Like, you can still eat meat if you want. I'm not doing it. So I'm the same way when it comes to religion. My daughter has a friend who attends a Catholic church, and then she went over there and had a slumber party, and they were going to church on Sunday. You know, the mother would text me and let me know, like, you know, did you want me to bring her home before we go to church, or is it okay if she goes with us? And I would just ask her, I'm like, you want to go to church with them, or are you going to come back home? She's like, I'll go because it's fun, because sometimes they have snacks and you can color. She's an opportunist. She used to go to vacation Bible school in the summertime because my mother, I don't have any child daycare or anything like that. So the boys are a little bit older and they can stay at home by themselves during the summer. But she kind of wanted to go and do something, and my aunt taught Bible study during the summers. And she would go with her for the snacks and the coloring. And I would come home like, what you learned about Jesus today? And she was like, I don't know. We had fruit snacks today though. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. So no, I don't tell them what they can and, you know, cannot in that respect. You know, if you grow up and end up a believer, okay, well, I'm still not going to be. And all of that is very important when they talk to their friends about their non-belief. I haven't heard any pushback. Yeah, the second oldest one, there was some pushback when he said that. He had a friend named Cole that would always try to get back with him, like, oh, well, you should believe in God. How can you not believe God? Then what do you believe in? He's like, no, wait. He was 12 at the time, and having that conversation was a lot. So, no, I don't tell them what not to say, but I'm just like, the thing is, do you want to get into that conversation in this situation, like right now? Do you really want to have a conversation? You're there to learn, not really do all that and have a conversation with them right there. So, I don't tell them what, you know, not to say it or whatever, but, and then, yeah, so that's pretty much where I'm at with it.
So, our kids are so similar, it's so funny. My older two are definitely, you know, we're all non-believers at this point, and I was a little more staunch about it because I deconverted, and I was very angry at first about, you know, the harm that religion had done. So I was adamant about, if I love my kids, I'm not gonna let them go down this path. I'm gonna stop it right here. So, like I said, we all went through deconversion together. Like I said, my youngest, she's like, you know, I asked her and I said, do you tell people about not believing? She's like, if I don't really care about them being a friend or not, then, you know, I'll tell them, whatever. And I was like, wait, okay. I get, like, what does that mean? Does that mean, like, if they'll just leave, you don't, whatever. And she's similar to what Marquita was saying about her daughter. She's a social butterfly. And lately she's watching this show on Netflix or something like that. I hear it on the computer upstairs. And, you know, I let them have somewhat free range because I put lots of restrictions on everything. So, you know, they can't see certain things on YouTube, they can't be on certain websites, they can't, you know, so I kind of just let them go. But I hear she's watching some show called, I think, Family Reunion or something like that. And I'm always hearing, like, Loretta Devine in a church voice. And I'm like, honey, what are you watching? Because it's triggering to me, it's reminding me of when I was, you know, back in church. And I said, are you watching church? And she's like, no, Mommy, I'm watching Family Reunion. And so I sometimes wonder if that, and she's watching that because we're very, we're kind of a bubble in our home. We are not as close to our outside family as I was when I was growing up. And so sometimes, you know, if I'm being honest, I do wonder if she misses that or if she wishes she had that too, because, you know, why else would a 10-year-old be watching Loretta Devine talking about church? But as far as my older two, they're very outspoken. My 13-year-old is kind of like Mr. Spock. He's very logic and reason driven, and you know, when we first deconverted, he was about 6, and that was kind of all he knew. And he's like, I don't understand. You told me that this was real, and this is this, and this is that. And I had to really like walk him through the logic of it. But once he finally got it, he was like, oh, that makes no sense. And so now he's kind of one of those like annoying atheists that's like, that's not real. That's just stupid. Why are you believing that? I'm like, honey, you can't just do that either. Like, you can't. Can we find the middle ground?
There's no gray.
Right, there's no and I encourage them to be who they are, you know, to be openly, unapologetically who they are, because eventually they will find their people. And that's like, if I can impart anything that I know as a parent, because like I said, I'm winging it. Eventually they will find their people. My oldest found his people within the LGBT and atheist community at his school. And once they find their people, it's just beautiful. I mean, it is. Once they find people that they can be their full selves with, and you see that, it's just very, it's very heartening, you know. And my 13-year-old's going through that now because he's in that 8th grade, you know, year, and kind of 7th and 8th is when they start to find their people and they start to differentiate a little bit. And so he's in the throes of that right now. So for all of them in elementary school, especially in Texas, it was, y'all don't go to church? What's wrong with y'all? Well, you're going to hell. You know, and kids are telling my 5-year-old that, you know, he or she is going to hell because all 3 of them went through it. And I'm just like, you just kind of have to keep going until, you know, I'm like, honey, it's okay. They're full of shit. You know, there's nothing.
Right.
It's fine. You know, just keep going. Just keep going. And I think a lot of parenting is just that. Just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
All the problems don't go away.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. They just become different problems. But yeah, I think eventually, if they are who they are, authentically, they will find their people.